First contact. The crystalline spires of Araxis Prime glittered in the light of twin suns as Sentinel Commander Thalra Vex stood at the observatory deck, her four-fingered hands clasped behind her back. The Araxian civilization had known peace for 3 centuries. Their technological advancement focused on art, medicine, and the gentle exploration of nearby star systems. War was a distant memory, preserved only in historical archives and cautionary tales told to the young. Commander, called Lieutenant Krell, interrupting her contemplation. The long-range sensors have detected something unusual at the edge of our system. Thalra turned, her opalescent skin reflecting the ambient light. Unusual how, Lieutenant? It's massive, Commander. Larger than any vessel we've ever encountered or constructed. And it's moving directly toward Araxis Prime. Thalra felt a chill run through her slender frame. The Araxians had encountered many spacefaring species in their exploration of the local galaxy. All had been peaceful exchanges, cultural and scientific missions that enriched both parties. This was something different. "Show me," she ordered. The lieutenant activated the holographic display. A 3-dimensional rendering of their star system materialized before them, with a blinking red indicator marking the approaching object. The scale was difficult to comprehend. The vessel was nearly the size of Araxis' smallest moon. "Have we established communication?" Thalra asked, studying the projection. "We've sent standard greeting protocols on all frequencies. No response yet." Thalra nodded slowly. "Alert the High Council. This requires immediate attention." Within hours, the High Council of Araxis convened in the Grand Chamber, a magnificent hall with walls of translucent crystal that filtered the sunlight into prismatic patterns across the floor. 12 elder Araxians sat at a circular table, their expressions grave as Thalra presented the information. "The vessel continues its approach," she explained. "Our preliminary scans suggest a design unlike anything in our databases. The energy signature is concerning." High Counselor Zev, the eldest among them, leaned forward. "Concerning in what way, Commander?" "The power output exceeds our largest city's energy consumption by a factor of 20, Thalra replied, her voice steady despite the implication. "And there are what appear to be weapon systems. Extensive ones." A murmur passed through the council members. Weapons of war were relics of the past on Araxis, maintained only as museum pieces and historical curiosities. "Who would build such a thing?" asked Counselor Mira, her voice barely above a whisper. "We believe it may be a species previously unknown to us," Thalra responded. "The trajectory suggests origin from the direction of the Orion Spur, a region we have yet to fully explore." High Counselor Zev closed his eyes briefly, as if in meditation. When he opened them, his decision was clear. "Prepare a delegation vessel. We will meet this newcomer with diplomatic courtesy, as is our way." "With respect, High Counselor," Thalra interjected, "we should also prepare defensive measures. As a precaution." Zev regarded her with ancient eyes. "What defenses would you suggest, Commander?" "Our civilization has not built weapons of war in generations. We have shield technology for cosmic radiation, atmospheric entry systems that could be modified, and improvised defenses against a vessel of such power." Counselor Mira interrupted. "We would be like children holding up paper against a storm." Thalra straightened her posture. "Even paper can slow rain, Counselor." The debate continued as the mysterious ship drew closer to Araxis Prime. The planet's scientists and engineers worked feverishly to repurpose civilian technology for defensive capabilities. Meanwhile, a delegation vessel was prepared. The finest diplomatic ship in the Araxian fleet, its hull adorned with symbols of peace and cultural exchange. Commander Thalra Vex insisted on leading the delegation herself. As the sleek Araxian ship departed the atmosphere, she stood on its bridge, watching as they approached the colossal vessel that now dominated the view. Up close, the alien ship was even more intimidating. Its hull was dark, almost black, with geometric patterns that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Massive structures that could only be weapon emplacements dotted its surface, and engines larger than Araxian city centers pulsed with contained energy. "Open a communication channel," Thalra ordered. "All frequencies, all known protocols." For several tense moments, there was nothing but silence. Then, without warning, a beam of light erupted from the massive vessel, not directed at their ship, but at a small, uninhabited moon in the Araxian system. The energy discharge struck the lunar surface, and before their horrified eyes, the moon shattered like glass, fragments spinning away into space. "By the ancestors," whispered Lieutenant Krell beside her. A communication alert sounded, and a voice came through their systems, translated automatically by their computers into the Araxian language. "Araxian vessel, this is the UES terminus of the Earth Defense Fleet. We represent humanity. Your presence has been acknowledged." The voice was flat, emotionless, and the words sent a wave of dread through Thalra's body. Not a greeting, not an introduction of peaceful intent, just an acknowledgement of their existence. "This is Commander Thalra Vex of Araxis Prime," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "We welcome you to our system in peace and friendship. May we inquire as to the purpose of your visit and the demonstration we just witnessed?" A pause followed, longer than communication lag could explain. "Commander Vex, this was not a demonstration. It was a calibration of our tertiary weapon systems after long-range travel. We apologize for any alarm caused." Thalra exchanged glances with her crew. The casual destruction of a celestial body as a mere calibration exercise spoke volumes about the technological disparity between their civilizations. "I understand," she responded carefully. "We would be honored to escort you to our world and introduce you to our leaders. Araxis Prime welcomes peaceful visitors from across the stars." Another pause. "That will not be necessary at this time, Commander. The UES terminus will establish orbit around your world. A delegation will be sent to your surface coordinates within 12 of your planetary hours. Please ensure appropriate reception facilities are prepared." The communication ended abruptly, leaving Thalra and her crew in stunned silence. "Commander," Lieutenant Krell said quietly, "that wasn't a request." "No," Thalra agreed, her eyes fixed on the enormous vessel. "It wasn't." As the Araxian delegation ship returned to their homeworld, the massive human warship moved into a perfect orbital position, as precise as if it had been navigating Araxian space for years. Its shadow periodically passed over the capital city, a visible reminder of the power now hanging above them. In the High Council chamber, chaos erupted as reports of the moon's destruction spread. The architectural marvel that had hosted calm deliberation for centuries now echoed with frightened voices and desperate proposals. "We should evacuate the population centers." Where would we go? They could destroy our entire planet with that weapon. "Perhaps we should prepare tributes, show our value to them as—" Silence. High Counselor Zev's voice cut through the panic. All eyes turned to the ancient Araxian as he slowly rose from his seat. "Commander Vex, your assessment." Thalra stepped forward, her military training providing a calm center in the storm of fear. "The humans, as they call themselves, possess technology far beyond our own. Their demonstration, intentional or not, makes it clear that resistance would be futile. Then we surrender before they even make demands," asked Counselor Mira, incredulous. "No," Thalra replied. "We prepare, we gather information. We show strength through dignity, not through hopeless confrontation. And most importantly, we learn what they want." High Counselor Zev nodded slowly. "Prepare for their delegation as requested. Commander Vex, you will lead our reception committee. Your military background may provide insights that we civilians lack." As the council dispersed to make preparations, Thalra remained in the chamber, studying tactical displays of the human vessel now in orbit around her world. Its weapons systems alone outmatched the entire energy output of Araxian civilization. "What could they possibly want from us?" Lieutenant Krell asked, joining her at the display. Thaura's eyes remained fixed on the image of the UES terminus. That, Lieutenant, is the question that will determine the future of our species. Outside, citizens gathered in public spaces, their eyes turned skyward where the massive human warship was now visible even in daylight, a dark shape against the blue sky, a harbinger of change that had arrived without warning or invitation. The peaceful world of Araxis held its breath, waiting for first contact with a species that had already demonstrated that they possessed the power of gods. The ultimatum. The 12 hours passed with excruciating slowness. Throughout Araxis Prime, citizens alternated between panic and fascination. Some fled the capital for the countryside, while others gathered in public squares, eyes turned skyward at the massive vessel now clearly visible in orbit. Scientists worked frantically to analyze the limited data they had gathered on the human ship, while the planet's meager defense forces, little more than a peacekeeping constabulary, were placed on high alert. Thaura Vex had not slept. Instead, she had pored over historical records of Araxian conflicts from centuries past, searching for anything that might provide insight into how to handle this unprecedented situation. The Grand Reception Plaza, normally used for cultural celebrations and diplomatic welcomes, had been prepared according to the human specifications transmitted after their initial contact. A large, open space with minimal structures and a limited Araxian presence. "They're coming," Lieutenant Krell announced, checking his communication device. Atmospheric entry detected over the northern continent. Thaura nodded, adjusting her formal uniform, the closest thing to military attire in the Araxian wardrobe. How many vessels? Just one. Small compared to their mothership. A small blessing, Thaura thought. Perhaps they weren't planning an immediate occupation. High Counselor Zev joined her at the edge of the plaza, his ancient eyes clouded with worry. "In all my cycles, I never imagined such a day," he confessed quietly. "Meeting a species with the power to end our civilization with a gesture. Let us hope they have no such intention," Thaura replied, though uncertainty gnawed at her. The human shuttle appeared in the sky above the plaza, a sleek, angular craft that descended with impossible precision. Unlike Araxian vessels, which hummed with the gentle resonance of gravitic drives, this craft was nearly silent, suggesting technology that manipulated physical forces in ways the Araxians had never conceived. It landed at the center of the plaza, settling on extended struts. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a mechanical hiss, a ramp extended from the craft's underside. 3 figures descended, bipedal, encased in what appeared to be armored suits that made their already substantial frames seem even more imposing. Their faces were concealed behind polarized visors, rendering them anonymous and intimidating. They moved with a precision that suggested military training, scanning their surroundings systematically. Behind them came a 4th figure, clearly different. This human wore what seemed to be a uniform rather than armor, though Thaura noted subtle bulges that suggested concealed protection. The face was exposed, revealing features surprisingly similar to Araxians, though the skin was a solid tan color rather than opalescent, the eyes smaller and the head crowned with short, dark fibers. "I am Captain Elena Sorensen of the United Earth Ship Terminus," the unarmored human announced, her voice translated by a device at her throat. "I speak for humanity in this encounter." Thaura stepped forward, performing the traditional Araxian greeting, hands open, palms forward. "I am Commander Thaura Vex of the Araxian Sentinel Force. With me is High Counselor Zev, elder of our governing body. We welcome you to Araxis Prime." Captain Sorensen made no attempt to reciprocate the greeting gesture. Instead, she assessed Thaura with eyes that seemed to catalog every detail for tactical significance. "Your welcome is acknowledged, Commander Vex," the human replied. "However, this is not a diplomatic visit in the traditional sense. I am here to inform your leadership of humanity's requirements." Requirements. Not requests, not proposals, requirements. Thaura felt her skin temperature drop, An Araxian physiological response to threat. Perhaps we could discuss these requirements in our council chamber, suggested High Counselor Zev, his voice gentle but firm. We have prepared refreshments and— That won't be necessary, interrupted Captain Sorensen. My message is brief and my time limited. The UES terminus is the vanguard of humanity's expansion into this sector of space. We have identified Araxis Prime as strategically valuable for its position and resources. She paused, allowing the implications to sink in before continuing. Earth requires access to your planet's rare mineral deposits, particularly the crystalline formations your civilization uses in your architecture. Our scans indicate these possess unique properties valuable to our quantum communication systems. Thaura struggled to maintain her diplomatic composure. These crystals are sacred to our people, Captain. They are the foundation of our culture, our technology, our very way of life. We are aware, the human captain replied, her tone unchanged. We do not intend to strip your world bare. We propose a mutually beneficial arrangement. You will provide us with a sustainable harvest of these resources, and in exchange, humanity will extend its protection to your world and share certain technological advancements. Protection? High Counselor Zev questioned. From whom? The Araxian system has known peace for generations. For the first time, something like emotion flickered across Captain Sorensen's face, a grim smile that held no warmth. The galaxy is not the peaceful expanse you believe it to be, Counselor. There are predatory species that would see your world as nothing more than resources to be consumed. Humanity has encountered them, fought them, survived them. The protection we offer is not symbolic. It is essential for your continued existence. Thaura felt a chill at the captain's words. Was this a veiled threat or a genuine warning? We will need time to consider your proposal, Thaura said carefully. Our council must debate such a significant decision. Captain Sorensen's expression hardened. You have 12 hours to provide your response. To demonstrate our good faith, I am authorized to share preliminary data on the threats that exist beyond your knowledge. She raised her hand, and one of the armored humans stepped forward, extending a device that projected a holographic display. It showed images that stunned the Araxians, worlds burning, civilizations in ruins, species being systematically exterminated by forces that defy description. These recordings were taken over the past 30 Earth years, the captain explained. The species responsible has no name we can pronounce. We call them the Scourge. They consume rather than conquer. They do not negotiate. They do not show mercy. The images shifted to show human vessels, dozens of ships like the Terminus, engaged in battle with amorphous, organic-looking craft that seemed to devour everything they touched. Humanity stands against the darkness, Captain Sorensen continued, her voice taking on a quality almost like pride. Not from altruism, but from necessity. We fight because the alternative is extinction. Your crystals will enhance our quantum communication network, allowing our fleets to coordinate more effectively against the Scourge. The hologram deactivated, leaving the Araxians in stunned silence. 12 hours, Commander Vex, the captain repeated. Choose wisely. With that, the human delegation returned to their shuttle. The craft lifted off with the same eerie silence with which it had arrived, accelerating into the sky until it was lost from view. As soon as they were alone, High Counselor Zev turned to Thaura, his ancient face lined with concern. What do you make of this, Commander? Truth or manipulation? Thaura watched the sky where the shuttle had disappeared. I cannot say with certainty, Counselor, but those images, the technology they displayed, I believe there was truth in what she showed us. Perhaps not the whole truth, but enough. And if we refuse their protection? Asked Lieutenant Krell, who had remained silent throughout the exchange. Thaura's expression darkened. Then I suspect we will learn firsthand whether humans or the Scourge are the greater threat. The High Council convened an emergency session as word of the human demand spread throughout the capital. Public reaction was divided. Some Araxians called for immediate compliance to avoid potential conflict, while others were outraged at the implied threat to their sovereignty and sacred resources. Meanwhile, in the Sentinel Command Center beneath the capital city, Thalra gathered her most trusted officers. Despite generations of peace, the Araxians had maintained a small defense force, primarily for disaster response and ceremonial functions. Now these officers looked to her for guidance in a crisis none of them had been trained to handle. "We must prepare for all possibilities," Thalra told them, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "Lieutenant Krell, what assets can we deploy if negotiations fail?" Krell hesitated before responding. "Commander, we have 17 atmospheric interceptors, designed for planetary security patrols. They carry minimal armaments. We have 3 orbital platforms originally built for research purposes that could, theoretically, be weaponized. And we have prototype shield technology designed to protect against solar radiation. Against a ship that destroyed a moon as a calibration exercise," another officer remarked grimly. Thalra nodded, acknowledging the hopeless disparity. "I am not suggesting we can defeat them in direct conflict. But if it comes to resistance, we must have options, even if those options merely buy time." "Time for what, Commander?" asked a young officer at the back of the room. "For evacuation, for surrender, for prayer." Thalra regarded the young Araxian with steady eyes. "Time for humanity to reveal its true nature, officer. In my experience, first demands are rarely final terms. They have shown us the stick. We need to understand what they truly value before we can find an alternative path." As the Defense Force began its preparations, futile as they might be, Thalra was summoned back to the High Council chamber, where debate had devolved into chaos. "We cannot give them our sacred crystals," shouted one counselor. "They are the heart of our world, our connection to the ancestors. And what good are traditions if we are all dead?" countered another. "You saw what their weapons did to Calyx's moon." High Counselor Zev sat silently at the center of the storm, his ancient eyes focused on something distant. When Thalra entered, he seemed to come back to himself, raising a hand for silence. "Commander Vex," he said, his voice carrying despite its softness, "you have studied these humans more closely than any of us. What is your counsel?" All eyes turned to Thalra. She took a moment to organize her thoughts before speaking. "The humans possess technology and military power far beyond our own," she began. "Resistance, in conventional terms, would be suicidal. However, I do not believe they wish to destroy us. If that were their goal, they would have done so already, without discussion." She paced slowly as she continued. Captain Sorensen spoke of mutual benefit and protection. "This suggests they see value in Araxis beyond just our crystals. They want cooperation, not just compliance. This gives us leverage, limited though it may be." "What do you propose?" asked Counselor Mira. "A counterproposal," Thalra replied. "We acknowledge their superior position and offer a limited agreement for crystal harvesting, with Araxian oversight and strict sustainability protocols. In exchange, we request more comprehensive information about these scourge and human defensive technologies that we might adapt to our own needs." Murmurs filled the chamber as the council considered her words. "And if they refuse our terms?" asked another counselor. "If they demand complete access?" Thalra's expression remained resolute. "Then we demonstrate that while we cannot defeat them, we can make occupation costly. The crystal formations are delicate and complex. Proper harvesting requires knowledge that only Araxians possess. Destruction would be easy. Efficient extraction requires our cooperation." High Counselor Zev studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly. "A dangerous game, Commander Vex, but perhaps our only viable option. Draft this counter-proposal. The Council will review it immediately." As Thalra left to prepare the document, Lieutenant Krell fell into step beside her. "Commander," he said quietly, "while you were with the Council, our deep space monitoring stations detected something unusual." Thalra's stride faltered. Unusual how? Energy signatures at the edge of our system, similar to the human ship, but different, more organic in pattern. A cold dread settled in Thalra's core. Could it be these scourge the humans warned us about? Unknown, Krell admitted. But if it is, the humans' timing seems remarkably convenient. Thalra's mind raced with implications, or perhaps not convenient at all, Lieutenant. Perhaps this is why they came here now. As they reached her office, Thalra made a decision. Include this information in our counterproposal. If the humans already know about these signatures, their reaction will be telling. If they don't, it could change the balance of negotiations entirely, Krell finished. Precisely, Thalra agreed, stepping through her office doorway. Now we shall see whether humanity came as conquerors or, as they claim, protectors. The 12-hour deadline approached with relentless certainty as Araxis Prime held its breath, caught between mysterious threats from beyond and the intimidating human warship that loomed above their world, either their doom or their salvation, with no way to know which until it was perhaps too late. Respect earned. 5 hours remained until the humans' deadline when the Araxian delegation, led by Commander Thalra Vex and High Counselor Zev, boarded their diplomatic vessel to meet with Captain Sorensen. Rather than waiting for the humans to return to their world, Thalra had suggested this approach, a small assertion of Araxian agency in a situation where they held few cards. The journey to the UES terminus was tense and silent. Through the viewport, Thalra studied the massive human warship, noting details that had escaped her initial observation. Scarring on the hull that suggested previous battles, weapon emplacements that showed signs of recent use, and a design philosophy that emphasized function over aesthetics, the antithesis of Araxian sensibilities. They are a species shaped by conflict, she murmured to Krell, who piloted their vessel. Is that what we're about to become? He asked, not taking his eyes from the navigation controls. Thalra had no answer. Their ship was directed to a docking bay that seemed impossibly vast, large enough to house the entire Araxian diplomatic fleet. As they disembarked, they were met by an honor guard of human soldiers, their uniforms crisp and their posture rigid. Captain Sorensen awaited them at the end of the formation, her expression unreadable. Commander Vex, Counselor Zev, she acknowledged. This is unexpected. We were prepared to return to your world for your answer. The situation has developed in ways that warranted direct communication, Thalra replied, and we wish to see the face of humanity more clearly. Something flickered in the captain's eyes. Perhaps surprise, perhaps respect. Very well, follow me. They were led through corridors of gleaming metal, passing humans of various appearances who paused to stare at the Araxian visitors. Thalra noted the efficiency of the ship's design, the purposeful movement of its crew, and most tellingly, the way every human they passed was armed in some fashion. This was not merely a vessel of exploration or diplomacy. It was a fortress, populated by warriors. Captain Sorensen brought them to a conference room, with a large viewport offering a stunning view of Araxis Prime below. The beauty of her homeworld seen from this perspective momentarily took Thalra's breath away. The swirling blues and greens of its surface, the delicate ring system, and the glittering cities visible even from orbit. Your world is beautiful, Sorensen remarked, following Thalra's gaze. Few planets in this sector have been so fortunate. Fortunate, High Counselor Zev inquired. To develop in peace, the captain clarified. To evolve without the constant pressure of external threats. It is rare. Thalra sensed an opening. You speak from experience, Captain. Sorensen's expression hardened slightly. Earth's history is one of constant struggle, first against nature, then against ourselves, and finally against threats from beyond. We have never known the luxury of centuries of peace. Perhaps that explains the differences in our approaches, Thalra suggested. We come with a counter-proposal to your requirements. She gestured, and Lieutenant Krell presented a data device. Captain Sorensen accepted it with a raised eyebrow. slotting it into a console on the conference table. A holographic display materialized, showing the terms Thalra and the Council had prepared. Sorensen read in silence, her expression growing increasingly neutral, a controlled lack of reaction that Thalra found more unsettling than anger would have been. Limited access to crystal deposits, Araxian oversight of extraction, technological exchange focused on defensive systems only, the captain summarized. And most interestingly, information about energy signatures your monitoring stations detected at the edge of your system. She looked up, eyes sharp. Explain. Thalra met her gaze steadily. If these signatures represent the scourge you warned us about, then your arrival here was not coincidence. You didn't come to Araxis Prime to discover new resources. You came in pursuit, or in advance, of a threat you already knew existed. For a long moment, Sorensen said nothing. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. A small, tight expression, but genuine nonetheless. Your assessment is partially correct, Commander Vex. We detected scourge scout vessels in this sector 6 months ago. The Terminus was dispatched to investigate and secure potential strategic locations. She paused. What you detected was indeed a scourge advance force. They will arrive in this system within 72 hours. The revelation sent a chill through Thalra's body. Then your timeline was not arbitrary, Sorensen finished. We need those crystals to enhance our defensive capabilities before they arrive. The Scourge Scouts have already transmitted the location of your world to their hive. They come not for resources, but for consumption. Total consumption. High Counselor Zev leaned forward. If what you say is true, then this changes the nature of our discussion entirely. You speak not of a hypothetical threat, but an imminent one. Precisely, Sorensen nodded. Which is why your counter-proposal, while admirably constructed, is inadequate to the time frame we face. We need immediate access to the crystal formations. Thalra processed this information rapidly. You could have simply told us this from the beginning. Why the show of force? Why the ultimatum? Sorensen's expression grew complex. Humanity has learned hard lessons about first contact protocols. When we approach species as equals, offering warnings and assistance, we are often disbelieved, delayed, or manipulated until it's too late. A show of strength establishes the parameters of interaction more efficiently. At the cost of trust, Thalra observed. Trust is a luxury that extinction doesn't afford, Sorensen replied, though something in her tone suggested she didn't entirely believe her own words. High Counselor Zev cleared his throat. If these scourge are truly approaching, what defense can we mount? Even with your ship's power. The Terminus is not alone, Sorensen interrupted. We are the vanguard, yes, but the rest of Battle Group 7 is 3 days behind us. 8 additional warships and their support vessels. With properly enhanced quantum communications, we can accelerate their arrival. She tapped commands into the console, and the holographic display shifted to show tactical projections. The Scourge Advance Force consists of 3 bioships, each capable of reducing a continent to barren rock within hours. Conventional weapons damage them, but not quickly enough to prevent catastrophic losses. The display showed simulations of combat between human vessels and the organic-looking Scourge ships, brutal engagements where both sides suffered heavy damage. But with your crystals integrated into our systems, Sorensen continued, we can coordinate our attacks with surgical precision, targeting their vulnerabilities simultaneously from multiple vectors. Thalra studied the tactical displays, her military training allowing her to grasp the concepts quickly despite the alien technology involved. You need our crystals not just for communication, but for targeting systems, she concluded. Sorensen nodded, a hint of respect in her eyes. Your understanding is correct. The unique quantum properties of your crystals allow for entanglement cascades that our synthetic materials cannot achieve. And if we provide these crystals, Thalra asked, what guarantees do we have that humanity will defend Araxis rather than simply harvest what you need and depart? For the first time, Sorensen appeared genuinely offended. Commander Vex, whatever else you may think of humanity, know this. We do not abandon allies against the Scourge. Not ever. Her voice took on an edge of steel. Every human in this battle group has lost someone to those monsters. Every single one. This is not merely a military campaign. It is existential. The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable. Thalra and Zev exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. We will need to consult with our council, Zev began. There is no time. Sorensen cut in. The Scourge will arrive in 3 days. We need to begin crystal integration immediately if we are to have any chance of defending your world. Thalra made a swift decision. As commander of the Araxian Sentinel Force, I have emergency authority under our Constitution. I can authorize immediate but limited crystal harvesting from our military reserves, enough for your initial needs. Full access will require council approval, but this should allow you to begin. Sorensen's relief was visible. Thank you, Commander. That will be sufficient to start the process. However, Thalra continued, her voice firm, we will not be passive participants in this defense. The Araxian Sentinel Force will fight alongside your ships. A startled laugh escaped Sorensen. Commander, with all due respect, your vessels are not equipped for this kind of combat. They would be destroyed in seconds. Perhaps, Thalra acknowledged. But this is our world, our system. If it is to be defended, Araxians will stand in that defense, even if only symbolically. The human captain regarded her thoughtfully. Your courage is admirable, if tactically unsound. She paused, considering. There may be another option. Your atmospheric craft. They're quick, maneuverable. The most agile in this sector, Thalra confirmed. Then perhaps they could serve as reconnaissance and targeting platforms, Sorensen suggested. Small enough to evade the Scourge's primary weapons, fast enough to stay ahead of their biodrones. With minimal modifications, they could help identify vulnerabilities for our main batteries to target. It was not the glorious combat role part of Thalra had imagined, but it was substantive participation. And more importantly, it was survivable. Agreed, she said firmly. High Counselor Zev looked between them, a strange expression on his ancient face. In all my cycles, I never imagined Araxis would find itself in an alliance forged in the shadow of war. Yet here we are, the peaceful and the warriors, united by necessity. History suggests those are the strongest alliances, Counselor, Sorensen replied. Now we have preparations to make and precious little time. The next 72 hours transformed Araxis Prime. Crystal harvesters worked alongside human technicians, extracting the precious formations with precision, guided by Araxian expertise. The Sentinel Force's atmospheric craft were fitted with human sensor technology, their pilots training alongside human officers to learn Scourge weaknesses and evasion tactics. In orbit, the UES terminus underwent